Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for joining us here on the program that gives you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and we're streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. Also want to remind you of our weekly program, which is Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. Let's do a take two. I think it's just this monitor. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Suzanne Taylor is with us again to continue our conversation on a lot of different things, but in particular, we're going to continue on with our conversation regarding Maslow. First of all, Suzanne, welcome back to the program. I like your T-shirt. It's a good statement to make. And a good question to put to people. And that happens to be, for those who are not watching the YouTube conversation, I'm changing the world. What are you doing? And that's a good question for each of us to ask. And I would say that here it is right here. Let me see if my camera will pick this up. It might just pick it up. There we go. Okay. All right, I got one. And no, this is not from previous years. This was from this year. And I did my part from that standpoint, but then the other part here is doing these programs to talk about these different things. But it's great to have you with us and to talk, continue to talk, because we kind of went off in a different direction with our last program. We started talking about Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. We'll kind of pick up there. Well, maybe we should do a little refresher for those who didn't or haven't listened to that program yet. Let's talk about what is that hierarchy of needs?
Well, we were just learning ourselves psychologically about, I think Maslow died some 80 years ago, and he was a pioneer in the human potential movement, mapping consciousness, I guess you could say. What he was pointing to was that we were not all in the same place, and that there was development going on where the lowest rung was survival. Plenty of that going on all over still, where, all you can think about is food and shelter and, living. And then you move up, you acquire enough to sustain yourself. And as you move up through these various, what he defined as levels of consciousness, you finally get to the top. And at the top, he called it self-awareness, where you are not just, where you understand your inner life as well as the fact that you're a body in a material world, but you understand that you're also a spiritual being, you might say. But uh, the reason that we were starting to talk about this is because I forwarded a piece that somebody wrote that I thought was, really quite wonderful. It's very beautifully written. Maybe we'll put a link to it, in the text
Hmm.
afterwards. And it was a piece pointing out, Maslow was a product of his time, just like he came along and we were getting very psychological and he mapped this path of self-development. Uh, we were not quite understanding the next step, you might say, which is where we're all one. It isn't just that I am personally aware I am a spiritual being, but I'm aware that it's one humanity and we're all interconnected in what Teilhard de Chardin named the noosphere, the
Mm.
level of non-body that we all are participating in. And that if we understood that, we'd have a loving, peaceful world. We'd be helping each other rather than, trying to exceed each other and climb all over each other. And that's what's going on in the world. I mean, he was just mapping um, in a kind of first pass at defining these things, but they are the way the world is. We still have plenty of people in survival and they're not thinking about consciousness. And then we've got this upper level. Cosmogenesis is a beautiful book that came out last year. I think Brian Swim is the author, where he just describes it all so beautifully. We're in a cosmic reality, not just an individual reality. And
Mm.
if we knew that, we wouldn't be having wars, we'd be altruistic instead of selfish. And that's an education process going on, you could say. That's the way I take it. I mean, what can
Hmm.
I do? I can be an educator. I can try to tune people in. I'm not dealing with those survival people. Others are, and God bless,
Hmm.
but I'm dealing with the people who are well along and need to take the next step, need to uh, live their lives in that next step where we are helping each other, where we, all it would take is that understanding, and we'd be living in a beautiful world. Everything would be about everybody doing well and being helped by others. If you weren't as successful as some, the successful ones would help you rather than beating you down, rather than this, you know, incredible reality we're living in now, where we are so distorted with so few people having so much, and they're running the world. These billionaires bought this election. I don't know
Mm.
how much you want to talk about the election, but here we are. It's 2 days later, and we are
Yeah.
the victims, all of us, of the billionaires who really are supporting our capitalistic system.
Mm.
And it's almost back to kings and serfs. We're all just struggling, and we don't really, that is not the prevailing understanding.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do is try to make it the understanding, if we're trying to fix something, we better know
Hmm.
what we're fixing.
Yeah.
The
Well,
predominant thing to fix in this world is this income inequality and the
yeah.
horror of those oligarchs
Yeah.
running the world
Well,
because
I
they
know
run
that.
it themselves.
Yeah, I know that Greg Braden, in one of the programs I had him on, talked about the a study that was done, the comparing and contrasting the process of competition and cooperation. And there were a lot of different things that were measured, productivity and happiness, if you will, or state of mind of the individuals participating in the two different aspects, and that the numbers were much higher when it came to cooperation in a process than competition. That a whole lot more energy was quite honestly wasted through the process of competition. I myself, for example, and this was even before I ever met Greg Braden, I lived and worked by the philosophy that, and I would have people who would come to me from other radio stations, say, "Do you know how your competition is doing?" I said, "I neither know nor do I care. My focus is on the radio station that I am the operations manager for. And my job, from my perspective, is to make the radio station better today than it was yesterday, and tomorrow to make it better than it was today." Now, that isn't to say that it isn't doing well, but there's always room for improvement. And this is also where, and I've placed this before. One of my guests just recently and it was a great conversation in regards to this about two phrases. One that is more current, and the other that's been phrased and stated by people who have come over here to this country from all over the world. And that phrase that you hear from them is the reason why they come here, whether it be legally or otherwise, is that this is, as they say, the greatest country in the world. All right. And you can use whatever barometers you want to measure that. There are those who will argue that, oh, no, it's not because we're this at this level and this and that and the other. Well, but people are still coming here. Okay. Then there's the other phrase, make America great again. Well, now wait a minute. Wait a minute. All right. Without and again, we're not going into the politics aspect of this. We're still going into the issue of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Either it's great, and I will agree. There's all, as I just stated, there's always room for improvement. No matter how great something is, we're always looking to innovate. I mean, you buy a house and you walk through it and you go, I like this. This is really cool. But a few years, you've lived there a few years and you're going, not that there's anything wrong with the house, but I'd like to open this area up and maybe put a big picture window on this side, looking out into the yard and this and that. Doesn't make the house bad. It just says, well, my desire for a more open space is I'd like to do that, or maybe you're into feng shui and you want to rearrange things and so on and so forth. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. It just means that you want to make a change. You want to make some improvements, some adjustments. There's also the evolutionary process. So how does that dynamic, and again, we're staying away from the political aspects of this, but tying in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, how does that play in there in terms of our desire? And I actually want to use the word to evolve, both as beings, but also as a society, rather than denigrating what is, playing the victim and saying, look, yes, we've got some blemishes. We're working on it. We're working on applying the ointment, if you know. Um, but there's a lot of good here. There really is. And let's be grateful for that. And then also say, how can we make this better? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, just think about the very slogan, make great again, implies something fixed that needs to change. It's an objective evaluating black and white, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but no, it's an evolution going on
Mm-hmm.
of learning, improving. So even in that slogan, it places us in a world that is not as evolved as the one we are in, if
Mm-hmm.
we understood,
Right.
that's the educating that needs to go on.
Right.
And Maslow was just starting to mess with that when I think he died too young, and he didn't have it fully developed. But he went and spent time in an indigenous society,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of made him rethink things because they don't have the individual. They're just in a circle and they're all equal and what have you. And he got that was not only a place that we had come from, let's say, but it's the place that we're evolving to, having taken on this sophistication of the individual that created the Industrial Revolution and all the progress that we have, the world of objectivity and materialism that we enjoy. Um, those indigenous societies stayed there, but they gave birth to this evolving society that needs to get back there.
Hmm.
Not back there to give everything up, but on including what we have created by industrious, rugged individualists. Uh, but now we have to really, we can kind of be educated by our roots. Oh, look how that used to be. And look at what cooperation created. I
Hmm.
mean, those were cooperative, working worlds. They weren't violent and oppositional and just in the
Yeah.
premise that they came from, where they were of the earth and of nature. Well, we still are,
Hmm.
but now that's an understanding that we have to get to and work from,
Yeah.
work from. So
But is yeah.
that's
But
where
isn't
we
that
are.
yeah? Isn't that
But
what's also?
it's
Go
no
ahead.
guarantee though. There's
No.
no guarantee because in the cyclical reality is what I wrote about today.
Hmm.
The cyclical reality we're in, where patterns reemerge. It's a spiral for humanity, and each time we go around the spiral, we're more aware. Uh, but when the way that we evolve is we're challenged. Things
Right.
don't work, so then we have to regroup and make them better.
Hmm.
Well, the problem is when we're challenged now, because we're so capable of destruction, it's either evolve or collapse.
Hmm.
So we're on that cusp. And well, it's gotten very, very pointed this week.
Hmm.
Are we
Sure.
going to evolve or are we going to collapse?
Well, one of
Unanswered question.
yeah, and I think that a lot. For example, when we went through the pandemic, um, after a period of time, a lot of people became very frustrated and so forth, and started to exercise their individual rights, which they are certainly they have every right to do so. But one of the things that came out of it was a conversation that we hadn't been having before. And that was the new pandemic that was coming, and that was dealing with our mental health and welfare. And we're having that conversation now. We have been on, especially on this program, to destigmatize for one. I sort of jokingly say this, but not really that, it's not that funny. And that is, okay, everybody who's listening or watching, if you're in therapy, raise your hand. I mean, and we are all, maybe it isn't with a professional therapist, but we need to make sure that we continue to communicate because that's the only way that we will work through these things to continue that evolutionary process. Because if we don't, it's what you just basically what you stated. We either evolve or we destroy ourselves. I mean, that's really the heart and soul of it.
Well,
Um,
you just said something that perfect to talk about our mental health crisis. One of the things that, again, that I deal with is
mhm,
this wonderful quote from Marianne Williamson. And she said, we're not having a mental health crisis. We're having a spiritual crisis. You
okay,
know, kind of back to the same point.
sure.
It's that where if you're out there in the material world grabbing, 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 and you're miserable, whatever, you're having a mental health crisis. But if you and if you're having that, it's because you're not tuned in
Yeah.
to this deeper reality in which you're a beautiful soul.
And of
And
course, we have to recognize too that there is no you cannot compartmentalize the elements that make up the human being: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So she's correct in that aspect.
but I love her calling attention to it as
Yeah.
and it's more than mental health that
Yes.
spiritual crisis applies to. It's all
Yeah.
of our crises. We're having a spiritual crisis because we're out in the material world
Hmm.
without being aware of the sacredness of our spiritual reality.
Exactly. We're talking with Suzanne Taylor, and we're talking about, of course, initially, we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think it's fascinating. I know I've heard of it, and I've heard of Maslow. I hadn't put the two together in my own head, but I think it's fascinating to converse about these things. I know that whether that you talked about Mother Nature, for example, and I view Mother Nature as the not only as our greatest teacher, but also as the great equalizer. When those two hurricanes went through the center of Florida, one after the other, or the tornadoes that blow through Tornado Alley in the middle of our country, or the wildfires that are burning as you and I are conversing right now, both at Vandenberg and in Camarillo. The people who are directly affected, there is no discussion of who'd you vote for, how much money do you make, what is it that you believe, what's your God's name, and so on, and where's your nation of origin. That conversation doesn't happen when Mother Nature kicks in and says, "Wake up," because that's really, I believe, many times what Mother Nature is saying. Wake up. And we
But you know
take
what
care.
does happen, Richard, is we become heartful. We become those
Ex-
people. The
Exactly.
disaster tunes us into what's basic, which is we are
Exactly.
these people
Yes.
who care about each other, who help each other.
Yeah.
So that's very telling it's almost like evidence that that's our basic nature. Our
Yeah.
basic nature is to care.
Yeah. I mean, during the pandemic, when it first started up, and of course, they were talking about how we were short all of these materials we needed to take care of those who got sick. The first responders needed masks and all kind of gowns and on and on and on and on. Private citizens stepped up. And then the restaurants, because nobody was coming in and they didn't want the food to rot, they decided, well, there are people on the streets who sure could use this and other people who can't get out. And so we're going to make these dishes and use this food. But it didn't stop with, okay, our refrigerators and our pantries are empty. Okay, we can close up and go home. No, they continued to gather up more ingredients, shall we say, to make food for people who were in need, who couldn't get out. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's those kinds of situations that draw out that which we truly are, which what makes
Yeah,
us a society, makes us
yeah,
civilized.
yeah.
And to me,
Materialism's
yeah,
strong though,
yeah,
we are addicted to it. We're addicted to stuff.
yeah.
And, one of the things that the really smart people who are dealing with the threats to us, global warming particularly, uh, that we're past where we can fix some of the aspects of that.
Hmm.
Really, we cannot fix them. And you say, oh, well, fix them and everything will be fine.
Hmm.
No, we cannot fix them. And what has to happen, and I believe this is true, they call it degrowth,
Mm.
where we have to reduce our consumption.
Yeah.
We will not like that, you know.
No, no.
It's what we for our survival, we'll have to be doing that. And I'm what I focus on is tuning everybody in to this caring reality. And if we're in this caring reality, we do the things we have to do to help each other and ourselves.
Hmm.
Uh, and that degrowth, whoa, that is going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Uh, but it will require simplification, grow your own vegetables, hopefully not only grow your own vegetables, but a way in which we're just not so stuffy, and
Hmm.
more basic and simpler,
Yeah.
simpler.
Well, I know that a lot of people, they're beginning, they are aware of this, and many already have,
Yep.
but many of us, myself included, we are going through that process of getting rid of things. Now, I don't mean putting them in the trash. I mean finding someone else who could use it because I can't use it anymore. For example,
Mhm,
I've been
mhm,
interviewing on this program. We just celebrated our 17th anniversary back in September. And I have boxes and boxes and boxes of books. Now, they're in excellent condition because they're review copies. And it's like what I want to do. And I did this in Phoenix before we moved to Santa Barbara. I had the same situation. I'd been interviewing and I had boxes and boxes of books. And I actually found used bookstores that would buy them from me. Now I would love to make a few dollars on the on these books
mhm,
just by virtue
mhm,
of I've had them for
mhm,
so long, I've been storing them, and it would be
mhm.
nice. But by the same token, it may come down to um, I really need to get rid of these books because I'm never going to read them, and maybe somebody else could get something out of them. So I'll give them to maybe a library, or maybe I'll just give them to a used bookstore. Let them deal with them, if they want them. Because so far I have not found a bookstore in Santa Barbara or Goleta yet that will actually buy them, even at, 50 cents a book or something like that. I don't care. If I can make 20, 30, $40, that'd be terrific. But we're doing that. I'm curious,
Yeah, we,
if,
we will create much more sharing,
mhm,
fixing things instead of throwing them away. That's
yeah,
that whole degrowth thing.
hmm,
Uh, Living together instead of nuclear families, living in more communal, community sort of ways, all the ways in which we aren't just chasing stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but so just in terms of my own um, perspectives and what I'm up to, it's hard for individuals to make massive changes.
it
Um,
is. It is.
Understandably, me and you,
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. We hopefully we move in that direction. We're more generous. We're caring, but by the same token, we're not really reducing ourselves to very, very simple lives.
hmm,
The more we have to do that to survive, how could that happen? Well, it has to happen out of our will. And I see that as not our individual will, that's hard, but getting our idea collectively, getting a new idea of what humanity's all about. And that's one of my tracks, that we need a new creation story. And it's a story, every civilization has one. Where did we come from? What are we doing here? And the one we're in now has us being selfish and individual, rugged
hmm,
individualists and climbing
hmm,
over each other. And we have to get a story that sees how we are interrelated and how we are one humanity. And, we could do several programs about that, so I don't want to go too far with that. But that's what I work on: how to
hmm,
change humanity's collective mind. And
yeah,
you can get the idea of it from, in previous times when I was young, America was the greatest. We were. We all thought of ourselves that way. But look at how we think of ourselves now. It's it's
yeah,
how we think. And we think of ourselves now as trouble, really. I mean, it isn't make America great again, but it's get us to where we're feeling like America's wonderful,
yeah,
uh, the way we used to think about it.
yeah,
Uh, and that's an education process also. And I'm very big on educating humanity to this new story, a new story.
hmm,
And it's science is actually ahead of us here. We haven't caught up with science. Science has shown us scientifically how we're all related from the Big Bang and things we've learned about. the fact that it's an evolving universe, not a fixed universe where Earth is here to use, but we're all in it together, evolving together. We are one humanity.
Yeah.
And if you get a really good storyteller to spin that tale, like Brian Swim, my favorite storyteller, and
Mhm.
you come out feeling proud to be a human being,
Yeah.
happy to be here to serve the earth rather than take from it, you know. It's a mindset, and we do need to evolve into that mindset.
Yeah.
That and then, oh, we're cooperating, we're feeling good about being human, and then we reduce our consumption, we grow our gardens,
Mm-hmm.
live
Mm-hmm.
together, you know. Uh, we need to get that in the air.
Yeah.
So that's a
Uh,
major thing that I
I,
pay attention to.
yeah.
How to do that.
Yeah. I would agree. And one of the other aspects of it too is, uh, and this I think is part of the degrowth, if you will, the reducing our consumption and so forth. One of the things that I think fosters the wanting stuff and wanting more and more and more is that we have what is referred to as an attitude of lack, that there isn't enough. And yet the reality is that there is more than enough for everyone. And someone may argue that. And I say, the problem isn't the supply, nor is it the demand, it's the distribution. I mean, look what happened during the pandemic, and then, of course, shortly thereafter, after the first year or two, where we wanted to keep buying, but nobody was bringing stuff to us, and we had problems with supply, and so prices went up because of this. In my personal opinion or observation, it's a ridiculous concept of supply and demand in terms of pricing. I mean, that's ridiculous. You have a loaf of bread, excuse me, on the shelf that's at a low price of, let's say, $1, and you have 100 loaves of bread on the shelf, and you paid as the grocer 50 cents. So you're going to make 50 cents on each loaf. And as no new loaves come in, but the supply on your shelves starts to diminish, you raise the price? Explain to me why. Why would you raise the price of the bread beyond the dollar you were originally charging when you had 100 loaves? Now it's down to 50. So now you're going to charge $1.50. Now it's down to 25. You're going to charge $2. Now it's down to 10. There's a $5 a loaf. I don't understand the logic. It makes no sense. But without getting too far afield here, when we start this process of letting go of the attitude of lack, that there isn't enough, and we realize, oh my gosh, there is more than enough, then um, we don't have to continually supply and supply our pantries and so forth with more and more cans of this, that, and the other thing. Now, I understand the whole ramification regarding, for example, natural disasters, earthquakes, fires, et cetera, and you want to make sure that you have enough to get you through for a few days until things get back to normal. I understand that. That makes sense. But this whole hoarding, because that's really what it is, needs to be. That's where the attitude of lack. Uh, Jacques Fresco, the founder of the Venus Project out of Florida, interestingly enough, he and I were talking. He was, I think, 94 at the time. He's since passed away, but we were talking about, he's an architect, he's a futurist, he's a visionary, and so forth. And the best example I can give is with the way he described this to me. Um, you have a store, we'll still call them stores. Nobody pays for anything anymore. You still manufacture, you still produce, but nobody has to pay, but we all do the work because everything is there and we don't have to fight for it. We don't have to struggle for it. It's all provided as long as we contribute and so forth. There's this store and there's this big bin of, let's just say, these USB flash drives. Thousands of them. The bin is 2.5 feet tall, and it's filled. It's like a 55-gallon drum, right? And you can go in and you take one because you need to store some and you need to share a file or with this or that. You're not doing, file sharing online. But you walk out the store and a guy comes up with a gun. So I want that flash drive. Well, he isn't going to steal it from me because I'm going to willingly give it to him, not out of the threat of the gun, but because I know that I can go back to where I got that one and get another one. And it's no big deal. But I would also tell this person, I'm going to give this to you, but I want you to know that there's this place over here where you can get as many as you want if that's what you want to do, because there's more than enough. We don't have to fight for it. Now, is my perspective naive? Am I being too idealistic, Suzanne?
Well, my comment goes back to your bread example. And the reason for that is because we live in an economic world and not a humanitarian world, and everything is monetized.
Hmm.
So that when you're in a world where everything's monetized, you get supply and demand, all those sort of things. But Richard, as we're speaking here, also lived with this understanding that there's enough. It's Bucky Fuller, I think he got famous for talking about that. Bucky Fuller, one of those famous people. That it's just a question of will.
Hmm.
That there's plenty. It's just not distributed fairly.
Right.
But I'm even thinking now with this threat of global warming and how we can't technologically solve it because we've gone too far, and that degrowth has to be part of our future. Maybe there isn't enough of everything, and that isn't the guiding principle, the only guiding principle, that all you have to do is redistribute and everybody has enough. Wait a minute. Now I think we've added to that. We've added this element of no, we've got to reduce how much we have to share. And then,
Hmm.
we all get to share in it.
Hmm.
But it's not abundant beyond, wildest dreams.
Right.
Mhm. Have some new calculating to
Right.
do.
Well,
Yeah.
but nature being our greatest teacher shows us through the
We
animal
can. We
kingdom, the
can.
wild animals.
Hmm.
How tell me what animal stores up beyond a
Oh
season?
yeah, yeah.
What
Hmm.
animal stores up for more than a season?
Hmm. Hmm. Well,
And
that's that selfishness. That's all that
yeah,
individual. It's all
yeah,
about me, me, me.
yeah.
No, no, no. It's about us,
And
us.
you mentioned about a new story. Well, currently in this country, and I don't know whether it's a majority or a minority or 50-50, what have you. There are a lot of people who they claim to be Christians and they believe in what the Bible says and so forth. Well, there is a passage in the Bible in the New Testament where Jesus talks about the birds in the trees and how they don't toil. They don't work 9 to 5 and then go home and so forth. And yet they're taken care of. And then it goes on to talk about the lilies of the field, and how they're here one day and they're gone the next. And yet, look how beautiful they are. And talking about not worrying about what you will eat or what you will wear or where you will sleep or where you will live. You are created by the Creator, and look at the birds, they're taken care of, and how much greater you are as created in the image of the Creator, that you will be taken care of. So let tomorrow worry for tomorrow. And yet, how many of the heads of some of these organizations live in lavish opulence? Now, I say it that way, and yeah, it does come across as judgmental and criticizing, but do you really need gold plated toilets and faucets and so on and so on and so on? And uh, if that's your choice, that's what you want to do, okay, fine. But don't tell us there isn't enough. There's more than enough for all of us, no matter what we believe.
Well,
Um,
if we got rid of all those billion that got rid of them, it sounds nasty. But I mean, if the billionaires all divested themselves, and that's something that hopefully on the horizon, it would take care of a lot of the whole world, actually. I mean, that's that we just got to stop having this lopsidedness where so few have so many, have so much. I'm just knocked out. The image I always keep holding in mind about terrible is that Jeff Bezos has two yachts.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't know why he has two yachts. Maybe he parks them in different parts of the world. I don't know.
Uh,
But when I say
yeah.
yachts, I don't mean, little fishing boats.
That's well, they're the equivalent of a city on the water there. I
Really? What
mean,
is he doing with two of them?
yeah.
Oh my
I
God.
but by the same token, okay, because we are individuals, because we have free will and all those things. I mean, I talk about, how we make choices, and I use the phrase that, we give people choices and knowledge of those choices to help make their dreams come true. And yeah, if you want to have two yachts, you can have two yachts if that's really, really what you want. But what we focus on this program here, Suzanne, of course, is focusing first on what your life's purpose is. Why are you here? You kind of brought that up earlier about, a new story about, how we got here, why we're here, what is our life's purpose, where are we going, and so forth. And I mean, I've on the one hand, if you looked at my spreadsheet over the years I've been working since I was, I don't know, maybe 11 or 12, even though I was cutting lawns, that was part of it. But being a paper boy at the age of 12, until today, I don't know. I suppose I have made maybe half a million, close to $1 million over the course of 52 years, roughly. I'm 64 now. So we'll just kind of break it down that way. I don't have anything to show for it other than the fact I'm still here. I'm alive. I'm well. I am doing these programs. I'm living in one of the most expensive places, if not in the country, on the planet. And I've been here for 18 years. I'm still here. So that says something about the universe or the creator, whatever you want to phrase it, taking care of me. And you live down in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and
Pretty material down here.
sure, but
Yeah.
you're still here. You're
Yeah.
still doing the things been doing, and so on and so forth.
But the difference between the birds and the lilies and all of that is that's all instinct. And then humans came along and we've got free will.
Sure.
So we are not automatically in that kind of sharing and nature thing. We have to learn it. The blessing is that we can learn it and we can create all this wonderful stuff that the birds can't create. But then we have to learn how to be evolved people so that we don't go, off the cliff of, taking our two yachts with us, but no good if they fall off the cliff. So
Yeah.
not gonna float anymore. So we have a big job to do learning. But I just want to also say, because of this day, we're 2 days past the election, uh, the I didn't know how survivable that would be emotionally. But I just want to say, because I poke around a lot, I'm online a lot, I'm involved in the conversation a lot. There's a kind of a good energy now for people are so blown away bad, that they're getting excited about what can we do? We have to do something. That's how we're going to fix it. You have to care. You have to get stirred up. If you're
Hmm.
complacent, you're gonna die. Global warming is gonna, drown you or whatever. But we need to get feisty, and this is making us feisty. Not everyone. Half the people are not feisty, but half the people are. And this is, it's been very encouraging to see that. I am, oh, that made me cry, but I am moved by that. I am stirred by that. I'm encouraged by that.
I
Yeah.
think that is part of the process that our society goes through on a regular basis. Obviously, every 4 years. I remember too, and I wish I could remember which campaign it was, which election it was. I was still married to my first wife at the time, so it was in the 1980s or 90s. And she was so gung ho about the Democratic candidate, and that person lost. And she cried. And I know people even today are crying over the fact that their candidate didn't win. But we're all still here today, even though our person didn't win. Is the world the way that we want it? Well, maybe not. Maybe not. But we're still here and we can still make a difference. I think that's part of the process that I think, we were talking about Maslow and his hierarchy of need. To me, there is a need right now for gratitude, regardless of who your candidate was, at whatever level. Are you grateful for where you are in your life? And
Important.
it really is. I'm quite honestly, there is a part of me that is a little flabbergasted that more people are not thinking in this way.
Well,
It's
probably because there's so much suffering, and
Yeah,
there's suffering at one end and there's greed at the other end. And we're not doing too great in the whole evolve department. But that's what's happening. We're evolving, and please God, we're going to evolve faster than we're going to destroy ourselves.
well, we're
It's a
certainly hopeful.
race.
We're we're
Yeah.
hopeful of
Yeah.
that. Yes, absolutely. I couldn't
But
disagree
I
with you
also
there.
want to make just one mention,
Sure.
of one of the major things that I am advocating for. Um, how are we going to come together in this higher order of thinking, in this loving way? And I got some advocacy for how to do that, which is, Martin Luther King spoke about the beloved community, Martin Luther King Jr.
Hmm.
It was one of his main tenets that there is the beloved community, and it was people like himself and ourselves and all the civil rights people. We were the beloved community. Marianne Williamson has gone on to speak a lot about that concept, and she's an old friend of mine, and I'm encouraging her, Marianne, call it for real. Get signatures, get millions of people, not political, but get a force for the good. That's the beloved community. And she said, well, that would have to happen organically that I would do that. It's not like I'm going to decide to do that. I'm on a tear to make it organic and to draft Marianne to do that. It's not she'd be the boss of it. She would
Sure.
just be the flagpole around which it evolves, and then we'd figure out how to boss it, how to
Hmm.
give it directive. What should the beloved community advocate? We need a little steering committee, but first and foremost, collect ourselves. So it's one of my major
Mm.
advocacies that Marianne stand up and say, okay, we're going to do something and create this beloved community as a force for the good.
Do you think that, and this is just a question of observation on my part, do you think that the places where people live are too big? In other words, there are too many people in one place. I know that there are neighborhoods, and I know here, for example, in Santa Barbara, just like in Los Angeles, you can go to and they will give you a name of that neighborhood, that subdivision. Um, but everybody's kind of jammed in together. I mean, they're just, they're so close and everything, and that's just the way that it is. But
We're
I've
not
often
sitting,
thought I've often thought that maybe because I think this was Jacques Fresco's concept as well as someone else who also thought of this idea, Paramahansa Yogananda and his communities. There's one up in Northern California called Ananda Village, which I visited, and they sort of limit the population of that community. And if you maybe you don't get in there, you then start your own community and you start gathering people. And there's sort of this structure for each of these communities. You know that you want to kind of keep them somewhat small so that number one, in a manner of speaking, everybody knows everyone else, not for any other reason than you know your neighbors. You
yeah.
know when someone's in need, those kinds of things.
Hmm.
And you set up a network where I'll take care of you and you'll take care of me
Yeah.
when my time is needed and so forth.
It would be
What are your
wonderful
thoughts
if
in that regard? Do you think that,
absolutely.
you
That's
know,
where we have to go. That's part of the degrowth thing where you give up your individual house where you've got your mansion and come into community where you have each
Mhm.
other. It's one of the aspects that we need to redo ourselves in, you know.
Yeah,
Loneliness is a product of not being in community and it's epidemic. And
yeah.
so,
Di-
there's so we have good understanding of where we need to go,
right.
how to
Now,
get there.
yeah.
Mhm.
Now, I'll put this to you also in the same along these same lines. There are going to people who are going to be listening and saying, "Oh, you guys, you want to live in," and they will use the word utopia. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know if that because I don't have the definition in front of me, but it's like, okay, that is supposed to be the perfect society, and on and on and on. I don't know that that's the case. And if you want to define it that way, no, I'm not looking at a utopia. I personally am looking at basically what you described is a greater sense of awareness, a greater sense of humanity, of equanimity as well as equality, or if you will, in terms of, and I loved one of these little videos that I watched. This one gentleman, I don't know who it was, but he obviously was probably a CEO or what have you. They were talking economics, and this person was saying, why is it that you hire X number of engineers for a company, male, and you hire Y number of engineers, female? And why do you pay them differently? And this individual basically says you pay them differently because there are more male engineers who are highly trained and so forth and so on. And you are going to get the higher quality in the larger number of males because there are more males going to school to become engineers, whereas there aren't as many females. So as you work your way through the pool of females from, let's say, the top down, the quality of those engineers, female engineers, is going to be inferior to the quality of the male engineers as you work down that pool from number one down to number 25.
I think that's a bogus argument.
I couldn't agree with you
Yeah,
more.
that's left over because we're in a patriarchy,
Yeah,
Men have, it takes women getting more rights all the time. And we couldn't even vote for until recently. So it's cultural,
yeah,
and that's improving. That's improving all the time.
it is. Yeah,
Like, all the gay rights and whatever. We all have rights to be equal.
yeah.
And we do better at it all the time, so far, you
Well,
know.
it's interesting too. You bring that up because I made this comment on a previous program, an observation about that very aspect of rights. And it started with race, color of skin. And then it shifted Not to say that it's been solved, but let's just say that, okay, we've addressed it and, we're still dealing with it, but at least we've addressed it. Then it shifted from the skin color to the genitalia, what's between your legs, male and female. And obviously the suffrage movement of the early 1900s and so forth. And then in the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s, it was dealing with same-sex relationships. And here we are in the 21st century, and we're now having these conversations about what is referred to as trans. A transhuman, if you will, in terms of I was born into this male body, but I don't feel like a male, or I was born into this female body, but I don't feel like a female. I feel like a male, and so forth and so on. And then this whole issue of pronouns. I'm not opposed to pronouns. I'm only opposed to them from the standpoint that just tell me your name, and I'll address you that way instead of these pronouns. But it seems to me like we have been going through these different phases, and there's been acceptance for the most part of the rights of individuals with different skin colors to function within a society in America. There has been, for the most part, there has been acceptance of both sexes functioning equally within our society. There has been, for the most part, the acceptance of individuals who prefer same-sex relationships to function in our society. And right now, there is the challenge of the trans community being accepted for the most part by our society
Yeah.
to be allowed to function. I often wonder, okay, well, what's next? I mean, is there anything else? Any other?
Yeah. Yeah, well,
How, but we've made
we do better and
those
better at
leaps.
that. We do better and better at that all the time. Again,
Yeah,
it's cultural. It's like dominating societies like to have things they dominate that are not as big or as powerful as they are. And equalizing ourselves is part of this evolutionary thing we're doing to drop all of that irrational or things that don't have real basis in anything supportable that makes us better, one group better than another group. But
yeah,
it's kind of a human nature that
yeah,
is going from stupid to smart.
yeah.
So here
And
we
it's
are, you know.
yeah, and I think that what's been happening over the last maybe 300, 400 years or longer, the first step in terms of skin color has taken centuries, no question. It's taken, and again,
Look
as
where
I
it
said,
came from. Look, we used to own people. Oh
yeah,
my God,
exactly, yeah,
we don't do that
yeah.
anymore.
But we have, on one hand, we have come a long way, and we need to take credit in the fact that we as a society have come this far, that we're
Mhm.
actually addressing the issue
Yeah.
of trans, for example. But
Yep.
at the same time, and we should recognize and acknowledge that, hey, we're doing something. It's not all bad. And that's one of the reasons why I talk about gratitude too. I think it's important that we are grateful for who we are, and where we are, and what we're doing, and all of those different aspects of the life that we live, instead
Yep.
of constantly looking out there and blaming them, whoever them is, for where we are. All of the choices we have made as individuals and as a society have brought us to where we are today. There are no
Well,
victims
humanity is
from
a
that
learning
standpoint.
species, Richard. We are
Exactly.
a learning species. Other
Exactly.
species aren't. They are what they are. It's
Yeah.
flat. They do
Yeah.
what they do. But we're a learning species, and it's risky. Are we going to learn enough before we got so
Wipers.
good at learning how to destroy ourselves that we
Yeah.
do it totally, or are we going to
Mhm.
learn to get beyond that and become a caring society?
Yeah.
I mean, that is the challenge of our day.
Yeah.
And
We,
maybe this election will get us more activated to work on that.
yeah,
Um,
I think so. I mean, I know that one of the reasons that I was rooting for, so to speak, Harris was because I wanted to see the first female
Oh
president.
yeah,
It had nothing to do with the other candidate. It just had to do with, look, we've had our first black president. But
yeah.
somebody on an interview said that Kamala Harris has already been president. There was during the Biden administration, he went in for a colonoscopy and he was
Ah,
knocked out. So for 85 to 90 minutes, she was acting president.
I hadn't thought of that. That's interesting. I
Yeah.
know to make something of that, that's an interesting thing to kind of fiddle around with.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's semantics maybe, but
yeah,
still, it's like, hey, she had a taste, whatever she was doing at the time, she had a taste for it. She had a taste of
yeah,
it. And it's not over. I mean, we've got hopefully dozens of more elections to come over the rest of this century, and whether it's the next one or the next one or the next one, who knows? But you just keep doing what you can. My message to both parties when you lose, especially when you lose, is change your frickin' message.
for sure. For sure.
Change your
The
message.
Democrats are out to lunch. Missed it
Yeah.
totally.
But then when the Republicans lose, they cry foul and what have you, and it's like change your
Yeah.
message.
Yep, yep, yep. There's a lot of that now, a lot of evaluating what went wrong.
Yeah.
And Democrats, it's not like we're not to blame. We didn't do it right. And
Well, either
yeah,
way, it is what it is. We
yeah,
are where we are, and now we have to
yeah,
evaluate, okay, now where do we want to go from here? And
yeah.
how do we get there? And that's
Right. Well,
part of
I'm
what
on
we're
it.
talking.
I'm on it, Richard.
Yeah. Hey, again, Suzanne Taylor, she is changing the world and asking you, and what are you doing? And hopefully you're listening to this program and participating in your community in some fashion, and hopefully providing a light to the rest of your
Yeah,
community that says, hey, there's so much to be grateful for, and we need to start doing that. And Suzanne, I'm grateful for you being a part of this program, and we look forward to having you back again to talk further on some of these other subjects that you've been dealing with over the years, the decades, that hopefully will give hope to people, that they will understand that it's not over. It's only over when you die. So as long as you have breath in those lungs, keep breathing and keep doing what you can. That's what's so
and
important.
notice that there's a new spirit in the land of
Yeah.
needing to really make it better. There's
Yeah.
half the people in this country now are getting jazzed up to make it better. So
Yeah.
that's what we needed.
And there are no laws that have been passed by any legislative body across the country, let alone in Washington, that are written in the Constitution wasn't written in concrete. As a matter of fact, they wrote it in such a way that it could change and could grow and could evolve. I mean, we did it 27
God.
times. We did it
Yeah,
27
please,
times.
please God, we go that way. We got to all work hard on that one.
There you go. There you go. Suzanne Taylor, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. Sue Speaks, is it not? Is the website we want to send people to?
Speaks.org is my website, and that'll take you to my Substack, which is where the action is.
All
We'll
right.
put some,
So
we'll put some of that in your material, yeah.
Oh, it'll be there. Yeah, you'll give me that information, but we'll make sure that we're linked there because we want people to go to suspeaks.org to find out
.org.
more about Suzanne and to find out about the work that she's doing. And we thank you once again for joining us here on the program.
My
And I thank
pleasure.
you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Just a reminder that we are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and then we stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. And don't forget about 8 a.m. Monday through Friday, 9 programs, 9 conversations, 9 guests, and we hope that you will tune into any, if not all of those. We also podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio. We're on YouTube where you can watch these conversations. We hope you'll subscribe and click notification. Also, let you know that the book Choices 5 Steps for Life is available at Amazon.com in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle. Audible is on its way, working on it. And then also, if you can help us out financially, supporting the work that we are doing, there's something you can do. Be a part of changing the world through Tell Me Your Story. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And then we ask you to take some time. We may talk about this on one of these programs with Suzanne Taylor. Going within and listening to that still small voice. We encourage you to do that during this, the decade of perfect vision. With all that being said, we thank you once again for joining us here on Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.